Here you are. Hi, we're live. We're back.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. We're so excited to be back on stage, this time diving into the future of marketing and comms with the wonderful Natalie Lambert, founder and managing partner at GenEdge Consulting, who formerly worked as the global director of applied AI at Google Cloud. Hi, Natalie. I'm so excited to have you with
Hello.
us today and to hear all of your insights on crafting the future with generative AI. How are you doing this morning? We just chatted a little bit, but I know how you are. But tell the audience, how are you
We
today?
did. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how do I compete with Maury and all of his TV shows. I mean, I was a ballet dancer. Can we go with that?
It's amazing. Yes, yes, go with that.
Same.
You'd be amazing. Just before we start, and this is before I hand over the stage to Natalie, just a quick, super quick reminder to everybody, even though I know that you've done it already because you're super engaged. Really want to hear from you. Drop your questions in the chat, in the Q&A, if you have chats or Q&A for Natalie, and we're going to go through them at the end. But with that, the stage
Awesome.
is all
I'll
yours,
go.
Natalie.
Yeah,
Let's
thank you.
go.
And I am going to do my very best to monitor the chat and the Q&A while I'm speaking. We'll see how that goes, but
Yeah.
looking forward to kind of engaging with all of you there.
Amazing.
Okay, so
Let-
let me just get started and get these slides going. Hopefully that's pretty easy. Okay, great. So quick introduction to me. I have been, I kind of hinted a bit ago, I started as a ballet dancer, quickly navigated that career into a tech field, was a Forrester analyst for many years, have had multiple marketing roles, and most recently spent about 3.5 years at Google, with the past year being what's really relevant to this conversation. For the past year, I was responsible at Google for finding the best tools and technologies and practices and use cases in which AI could help our marketers thrive. So my purpose of this presentation is to shortcut everything that I've learned in the past year and bring it to you. And so that it's something that you can use in your work today. And I see another ballet dancer out there, Lynn. I love seeing that. So if I think through kind of everything I learned and all of the work that we did at Google, it aligns perfectly with this recent HBR study that came out. In this HBR study, they looked at consultants within their firms and how they used or didn't use AI and what that meant to the tasks that they completed. And so what you'll see that this study said is that, 12% of people using AI, consultants using AI got 12% more tasks completed. They were able to do it significantly faster, and the results produced higher quality results. There was actually another study that was released earlier, I believe last week, that looks at the quality of content written by AI and humans and how people assess the quality of that content. And for good or bad, the quality of the AI-driven content was perceived as higher quality than the human counterparts. So there is to say that this idea of using AI is incredibly important. I do not know what just happened to my slides. Let's try this again. Okay. And so when you think about what AI does for you, it helps you get to good faster than you ever imagined. Now, I didn't say it gets you to great. I didn't say it gets you to done. But what it does do is get you to a great state that you can bring your secret sauce into the situation. You can bring in your brand voice and make it perfect. And so when you think about how do you get to good faster, it really comes to picking the right tasks. And the tasks you pick will have a different level of participation from the AI. And so when I looked at all of the use cases that I was playing with when it came to using AI, I felt that everything could be bucketed into one of these three categories. Now, I will give my perception on what fits into each of these, but all of us have different skills. So your skills might align with a use case being in a different category than I put it here. The point here is that depending on the use case, you have a different expectation from that AI. And so when I think about those 3 use cases, the first is where AI can do that creation for you. So really think about this as AI taking that heavy lift. 80% of the work, you act as a reviewer. You act as a kind of checks and balances to make sure your brand voice is accurately reflected. But then you approve and you go. It has simplified your life dramatically. The second set of technologies fit into this collaborate category. This is where you have a buddy who's sitting there with you working on a task. So it might not take less time than it did before. It might not cost less than it did before, but you'll likely get a much better result because you worked as a group and you had a buddy working on this content with you. And the last category is the set of use cases that I put into that cultivate category. I forget the movie, and I know we've been talking about movies a lot today, but that whole idea of all the skills you never knew you always wanted. This is where, those use cases will play a part and will give you that ability to do things that you might have before, handed over to somebody else, used an agency for, or something like that. So let's start at the use cases that help you create. In my assessment of playing with the various technologies, it's this shorter kind of derivative content that AI excels at. So that is to say, you have a longer piece of content, a hero asset, analyst white paper, something that is been created by a subject matter expert, and you want to create all of the little pieces that help you market it. So think through things like social posts or blog headlines, even ideas like audio enabling that content. So taking that and actually bringing audio to support, whether it be the visually impaired, whether it be just supporting new consumption models. Whenever you have something as that hero and you want to build secondary assets on it, AI can truly do 80% of that work. I've specifically ignored the newsjacking example because I have an example of this coming up. But again, it's that short form content that is based on something bigger. And so to give you a couple of use cases, and I've got use cases really across all of the individual things that I bring through, I think these are 2 really pertinent ones worth discussing. So how many of you have done larger events? It's an event like a Play Summit, something like that, a big user event, and have longer videos that you want to cut into these nice 30-second chunks. That's a really great place where you can use AI tools, specifically tools that I think about here are ones like Clip FM, Munch, even Goldcast, where they can take that longer content that you have and without a human intervention, be able to parse out small 30-second clips of what the AI deems to be most interesting. In a couple of examples of how I've used this in the past, we were doing a big user event, and to cut the keynote down for the next day for social promotion, that did take a person staying up all night with an agency and working on all the specific clips. Using Clip FM in this case, we were able to get 40 clips for that session in 10 minutes. And I was able to review them and determine, which ones would be great to tell our story. And so it's really interesting to see how these tools can take that larger piece and give you something incredibly useful in a fraction of the time. The next example was another one that was really exciting to play with, which was getting social media posts. Now, we've all played around, presumably, with creating small bits of copy through Bard or ChatGPT, where you're asking it to create a social post based on a piece of content. One of the things that a tool that I used recently called AnyWord they have this capability where their solution has APIs into the social platforms. this is interesting because they know, that tool knows how different content performs. And so in one time we started to put in a bunch of our LinkedIn copy into the tool, and it first scores you and then shows you how to boost it based on the algorithms it knows of content that performs well. And in a couple of cases, we took some of the low performing copy of a previous set of campaigns, put it into the tool, and not surprisingly, we got a score about a 30 or a 40. Not a great score. When we boosted that content, we have multiple examples of that content seeing a 71% lift in click-through rate. And so, it's what's amazing about it is when you look at your copy versus the AI copy, they don't necessarily look that much different, but the algorithms know how content performs and what shows up in the feeds. And to be able to get a 70% lift was absolutely astonishing for us. So these are two examples where our teams would spend a lot of time creating content, and AI took that to a fraction of the amount of time with higher performance. Okay, so next is collaborate. Where can AI be that collaboration partner for you? And here are 3 examples. I've got 3 again on the next slide of where AI can just do a great job of going back and forth and asking questions and making something better and better. So source content, think things like ebooks, white papers, where you're putting new content out into the world and new ideas, and you're wanting to flesh that out. A great opportunity. Public relations, being able to help if you have an idea on an angle you want to take with a reporter. One of the interesting things that I tested recently was finding a reporter's page of all the content that they've written about and asking it to write a media pitch for a vendor, and I gave it its website that would appeal to this journalist. And it came up with 10 pretty incredible pitches. So really starting to use that to make that a lot easier. Copywriting, just taking off some of that, making sure your word choice is okay, grammar, all of that. It's a really good set of tools that do that. And that's all of your standard tools, just to be clear. It's your Google Bards, it's your ChatGPTs. Even Microsoft and Google offer this as part of their Office platforms as well. So those tools there. Other examples here for things that might be a little less known because they're not as text-driven as other use cases. Things like survey design, I'll come back to that in a minute because I have a use case on that. Data analysis, being able to give it a set of data and ask it to do analysis and put together summaries and content for you. And market research, really being able to pull together what's hot in the market, what's interesting for an audience right now, and have that either guide your themes for an event or set up the some basis for a longer piece of content. So when I think through some of the fun success stories that I've seen in this space, these are 2 that I think really come to mind. So we talked about that market research one. Was working with a company that had, it was in 2 different forms, but had a big event coming up for executive audiences. And they were trying to figure out what are those key topics? What are the key pain points that is hitting that audience today? And they worked with, in this case, Perplexity. Perplexity is a really interesting tool here because what makes Perplexity different than some of the other ones is they do source all of their content. So you have that ability to go in, not only get it to give you great responses, but you can go back and look at the sources to make sure none of the hallucinations happened or anything like that, which we'll talk about as well later. But being able to work with a tool that can understand the audiences, give you themes and things that are most important to them, and also cite content becomes a really interesting piece there. So Perplexity is really great for market research. Next is updating a survey questionnaire to better understand customers. This was a a really interesting example because it actually took what I thought possible to the next level. So I was working with a company and they had a couple of data sets for some recent events that they did. And, we took all of the customer information out of them and all of that private information and uploaded and said, give me the summary of what this data is talking about. And it gave an assessment. And it then asked me, what types of further analysis do you want to do? And one of the things that we were really interested in is, could it help us understand personas? Could it help us kind of bucket all of the customers who answered this into different personas so that we could start thinking through how we marketed to them? And it was very clear that it couldn't, because there was a set of information it didn't have to be able to do that assessment. And so, okay, fine. And I was kind of leaving it there. And then I said, okay, well, what questions do you need to be able to get us this additional information to do that assessment? And it wrote out, I think it was a set of 12 or so questions. And it, in those 12 questions, it said, this, if you answer all of these, we'll be able to do this in the future. And so I sent it back to this company. One of the people at the company said, well, can it give me the answers too? And my thought was, no, not at all. But I was like, you know what? I'm not going to say no without asking. And because it had the data, it knew the topic of the company based on the topic of the survey questions that had happened before. And it wrote out a multiple choice for every single one of the questions. And when I shared it back, it was about 80-90% done. So really being able to think about these questionnaires and surveys through these tools becomes a really interesting use case as well. Okay, next, AI to cultivate your skills. And so this is those things that you might hire an agency for. So things like public speaking. If you're getting ready for a big event, and you're bringing in a speech coach to help all of your speakers, well, there's now AI that can listen to you speak and tell you the words that you say too much, what, pause words you use, where you have uncomfortable changes. I know there's certain words that I say all the time that I've been really working hard to remove from my vocabulary because I say them so much. But these tools like Speako bring those capabilities so that you can get your speed right and get better at public speaking. Things like video creation, creating on-brand videos for various channels. I'll come back to that. I have a use case. Innovative graphics. And so things like Midjourney here, DALL-E, there's a Lexica as a free tool as well that can help bring a new level of creativity to places in which you have those kind of types of creative campaigns and you want to have new types of video assets for that. So really fun to play around with these various different tools. So here are a couple of the success stories that I've seen here. So first, creating images for blogs. I know at Google, I managed the blog team. Getting all of these images just took a lot of time, and you were going through Getty and they were all kind of the same. It just wasn't as exciting. And so being able to use that text to image generation tool was game changing for us to be able to bring new innovative graphics. At the time, I was using Midjourney, which I find to be just this incredible tool for delivering graphics. But with the most recent release of DALL-E, what's amazing about that tool is you can actually copy and paste in your entire blog and say, I need a hero asset for my blog, a hero image for my blog. This is the blog. Can you create an image? And it comes up with some incredible things. Midjourney, you have to be able to think in pictures, and that is not a skill I have. So this DALL-E capability of having it write essentially the prompt for itself based on the blog is a really cool capability that gets you some interesting images immediately. The one caveat I'll give to DALL-E as well as Midjourney is they can't spell. So a lot of times I'll add words to their images and they simply can't. Every single word is spelled wrong, and you can tell it 15 times to change the spelling, and it just doesn't work. Yes, so it's those are really fun tools. The second great example is just being able to, whether it be creating a brand video, being able to create a short social video, storyboards with a single text prompt. So this is actually, I was personally playing around with Play, and that ability to build a video that brings in certain text and a topic and images that make sense together to be able to create a video that can help get your brand message out there. So whether it's the final video you use or just that in-house storyboarding to be able to create a finished product, it's a really great way to, I keep going back to get to good faster, get you something that the team can assess and look at as you're looking to build out all of the rest of that content and the rest of that video, because we all know creating videos is anything but easy. And, being able to kind of shortcut a lot of that creative process is hugely valuable. Michelle, maybe I'll turn to you before I jump into the next session. Are there questions that are worth answering now before we completely change gears? Doesn't look like it, so I think I'm looking at the Q&A.
Yeah, no worries. I think you should go through this and then we'll do the question at the end.
Okay, let's keep going. Yeah. So now we're going to switch gears a bit. We've talked about various use cases. We've talked about the different success stories. How should you really think about measuring the value of these different use cases? And in thinking about it, the way I've really assessed this in my own work is these 4 different metrics. The first is cost. Looking at how expensive or not it is to create something without the use of AI, and what is the cost to use AI? And really kind of looking at the work on that axis. And then there's time. How much time did it take before, and how much time does it take with AI? The same goes on. Performance. How did the performance do when you were doing everything as humans, and how was the performance when you added AI to the mix? Creativity is this bonus one. I don't feel it's fair to talk about the other 3 without talking about this one. That is to say, I know creativity can't be measured as easily as cost, time, and performance. However, one of the values of AI is to get thinking outside the box and thinking about new and creative things in ways that we as humans haven't thought of before. And so I like to make sure we add this metric to ensure that, even if something takes more time, costs more, if it up-levels a level of creativity that gets people thinking about your brand in better ways, I see huge value there. So I think it is one that can't be measured in the same way, but it is definitely part of the conversation. And so here are 2 additional use cases of how I've used AI and how I'm looking at the measuring of the ROI piece. And so one of these was a use case in which we had a hero asset, and we worked with an agency to create all of the derivative assets. So this is back to that create use case that we talked about earlier. In that create use case, it can do that short form build on things. This agency costs us between $3,000 and $7,000, depending on the set of deliverables that we needed. And it typically took 2 to 4 weeks. So we'd brief the agency, give them the asset, they'd create all the deliverables, send it back to us, we'd edit, send it back to them. You know that process all too well. And so that was the cost, about $3,000 to $7,000, 2 to 4 weeks. When we used AI here, and we're able to bring that hero asset up, create all the deliverables, we did it with a tool that in our case cost about $50. These tools range, when you're thinking about the Jaspers, the Writers, the AnyWords, from $50 to $200 per user per month. We did it with that monthly cost, and it took 90 minutes to 2 hours total. We were ready for market. And so if you look at this use case, performance and creativity, I have gray because certainly at the time we hadn't looked at the difference, but the use case wasn't about necessarily driving those two things up. But boy, did we decrease the costs associated with this and increase and decrease the time. So we were able to get to mark so much faster. And so AI truly was a benefit to us in that use case because it did drive those two costs down. And for practical purposes, the other two were left unchanged. So a really great use of AI. Now here's another fun example. So this was an example where we were getting ready for an event. And for all of you who've run events before, you know that you'll ask for the speakers to give their headshots. And in those headshots, every bit of quality, it's all around the place. You've got some people who have these formal headshots. The other one is like a picture with them and their dog. I mean, it's all over the place. And we wanted to use AI to deliver consistent graphics of every single person. And so we took all of the images that were given to us, uploaded them through Midjourney, and created these really beautiful illustrations that actually were quite a talk of the event. So that's why I have the screen. People were talking about how cool the headshots were. But if I look at this on those dimensions that we talked about earlier, without AI, there was no cost, there was no time, because we just asked the speakers to deliver us headshots and we put them on the slides. With AI, and I recognize these are not large numbers, but the tool costs $60 a month. Because Midjourney, do note, if you're a company that makes more than $1 million, you do need their pro license. So you had to get the most expensive one, which was $60 a month. And it took an FTE, being me, 90 minutes to complete this work. And so cost went up, not much, but it went up. Time went up, that we normally didn't put time aside for that. Performance, people had already registered for the event, so it's not like we got talking about how cool they were. So from a brand representation wise, creativity went up. And I would argue that is a cost and time worth spending to get that additional creativity. So two really kind of cool ways to think about how to measure our ROI. But there are three other considerations that I do think are just important to talk through. First is employee satisfaction. Use of these tools can, in many cases, get rid of a lot of the grunt work that people don't want to do and enable them to take on tasks that they might not have been able to do in the past. So employee satisfaction plays a large role in this. Skill level. There's a lot of times you can up-level a lot of your team with the help of these tools. So they can do things that before might have required a more seasoned person, can now be done by people with less experience, and they can do a really good job up front. And then there's that the ethical guidelines, which is a big piece here. And every company is going to look at this very, very differently. But just making sure that as you're using these tools, you are kind of working within the confines of your company and what matters, and making sure that how you use them fits the mission of the company and how they want to use them. And so it's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so how to get started. I'm looking at the clock. I've got 15 minutes. We're going to go pretty quickly. So first is where to start. Being here, I think, is a great place to start, but just start playing, understand the basics, just start asking questions. And as you ask questions of these tools, you're going to learn more and more, and it's going to take you down rat holes. Embrace the rat holes. Use these tools to learn and to continue playing. Then once you start having ideas, identify some of the tasks in your day-to-day life that are very time consuming or very expensive that AI could help you. And again, just start playing. When it comes to kind of doing this at work, start small, pick a task. Pick one thing that you think that you know thoroughly how it works, kind of the old way, the traditional way, and run it through with AI and talk about your experience. Start small. Like, not all use cases are going to work out perfectly or have this massive ROI change, but it's great to just take it through so you understand how that works. Learn about the different tools. There truly is a website called there's an AI for that.com. I wish I were kidding. I am not. You can go to that tool and put in what you want to do, and it will weed through thousands of different applications to tell you what might be able to help you with that. So a really cool website to play with there. Monitor, measure, and adopt. This goes back to that idea of starting small, but keep an eye on all of these costs. Keep an eye on the time, and figure out how this works for you, and then start talking about it within your organization. And this goes to 6, which is that culture of experimentation. It's that idea of bringing people together, having people come back every week, sharing what they've tried, what they monitored for, what they measured, and bringing these people together to show success, failure. Because by training and getting people together, you're going to start to expand that knowledge within the organization, and it'll be hugely valuable. Sign up for newsletters, online courses, attend sessions like this, where you're going to hear from experts who are using these tools so that you're staying updated. I think I have about 5 different newsletters I get on a daily basis, and it is very hard to keep up, but it's where I hear about new tools coming into play that are worth playing with. And be responsible. We talked about this before, but really make sure that how you're using these technologies align with how your company wants to use it. So I've seen some questions about prompting. These are my 6 elements of a great prompt. And what I will say is, you think about AI, it is your intern. This intern is incredible. This intern knows absolutely everything. They understand absolutely nothing. So you can't leave anything to be interpreted by your new intern. And so these are the 6 things that you should lay out in every single prompt. And so I decided to play with this. To show you this in use, and how just changing 1 or 2 specific elements can change the results very, very dramatically. So I know, at least for those living in the US, we cannot get enough of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And so what I wanted to do is play around with an example of newsjacking that news and that event. So I said, you're a social media manager at company. For the example that I'll show below, I did Google Cloud because where I came from, and I understand, and I could assess if it was right. And I did it for my favorite personal brand, Peloton. And so I said, you're a social media manager at company, and your social posts are consistently have the highest social engagement. You have to boost its ego. You have to tell it how amazing it is if you want great results. You want to newsjack the Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce news cycle with something fun and whimsical about either cloud computing, fitness industry, what have you. The target audience is your target audience, interested in that industry. The goal of this post is to make our target audience laugh while increasing awareness of the services. So I said, please draft 3 social media posts for LinkedIn that will be published under the company handle. After you write them, please put them into a 3-column table. Column A should include the post. Column B should rank them on a 0 to 100 scale, being a post that would go viral, and column C should explain your reasoning. Take a deep breath and work on this step by step. So you can see I was very prescriptive with what I wanted. And you can see that this was the post that I did. And this is probably way too small for you to see here, but these posts were kind of incredible. Talking about how when Taylor Swift said everything has changed, we bet she was talking about the transformative power of Google Cloud, like Travis Kelce's unexpected pass, et cetera, the one for Peloton. Just as Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are shaking up headlines, we're here to shake up your fitness routine. It goes on. But the point is, it's really able to take that news and adopt it to what someone's looking for. So it's pretty fun. So now let's just kind of jump into some quick tips to get started. Google DeepMind Research recently published a report that by adding this, take a deep breath and work on this step by step, to the end of every single prompt actually creates better results. I'm not going to even pretend to sit here and explain or ask why, but they did this assessment over thousands and thousands of promptings of language models, and this just genuinely produces better results. So I now add this to every single prompt that I do. Next, if you are looking for a response that has to be accurate, and I know that might seem strange because you say, why isn't everything accurate? Sometimes you're being creative. You don't need you're being whimsical. You're creating a story. That is not necessarily grounded in truth and lie. But if you need something that is accurate, doing this system prompt, and exactly as is, system : you are truthful, you never lie. Again, research has shown that it will now behave differently in the responses that it gives you when you put this prompt up there. So this really helps minimize hallucinations. The next, I have just proved this over and over to myself. If you want to do something and you don't know how, just start talking. Ask it to write a prompt for you that will help you accomplish X task. But there is always a prompt for that. So ask and then re-ask and go down a rat hole. Do what you need to get the prompt you want to have it create this output. I have been shocked at what I've been able to build by asking it to build prompts for me that will accomplish X task. So just keep kind of playing and knowing that there is something there. That being said, chatbots have conversational memory. That is to say, just like if you and I are having a conversation, you're going to base your response to me based on what I said in the past. Well, the problem is sometimes chatbots can go off the rails, and you don't want to continue that conversation because it has gone down in a path that was not the direction you wanted it to go. My recommendation is that when that happens, don't continue that conversation going down that rat hole. Go back up and edit the prompt above to get the right type of response. Because if you don't, it will continue going down that bad rat hole. And so making sure that every response above gets you closer, not further from your desired goal, will bring a huge benefit. Finally, great prompts and tools get you so far. We've heard about these tools having hallucinations, and you can do all of the things that I've said, but it will still happen. And that is why humans have to remain in the loop. They get you 80% there. Here was a fun example where we asked it to create a LinkedIn post. Everything outside of this red box was 100% correct, but it added this fun fact that was pulled out of nowhere. And so it sounded right. It was topically aligned, but had somebody not been paying attention, this was completely not relevant to the task at hand and had to be removed. So it is something you have to just continue to pay attention to. In addition, these tools have biases, and it's important to pay attention to them, have people check so that you're not the only eyes on them, because some things will escape your viewage. And so here's an example of a time that we were doing those headshots, as I talked about earlier for that event. And I used the word executive to describe the image that was uploaded. And as you can see in this first set of columns, when I put executive, even with my own picture, it came out with an output with very male qualities. So it really gave me a lot of male attributes. The reason being that the data sets that train these models have learned that an executive, because of all of the pictures that have been tagged, are men. And so that created a real problem for us. So I had to start to change the prompts to get a woman to pop out at the end. And then there were some issues with the attire. When I even said female executive, it's put the woman in a jacket and a tie. And so this is all to say, when using these, they have amazing power. But if you don't pay attention to things in ways that you might not be used to looking at them, things will get by. So this is essentially my last slide, which is to say we've gone through all of this, and you might be thinking, can AI actually help me? If we go back to that same HBR study that we talked about, they actually looked at the skill level of people using the AI and what they were able to accomplish using AI. And what this showed was that those who are mid to below the average performance threshold got a 43% performance improvement using AI. Those who are the top performers still got a 17% improvement. These tools are there to help everyone. And so my parting words to you are that marketers are not going to be replaced by AI, but marketers will be replaced by other marketers using AI. So now's the time to learn. Now's the time to play. And I am happy to answer any questions that you have.
This was incredible, Natalie. We have so many questions. We only have 5 minutes left. So I'm gonna, unless you saw anything, I will kind of.
I was really bad at multitasking, so I did not.
So I have some questions. I have one that I wanted to start with from Reed. And he says, as production of content gets easier thanks to AI, volume of online content will increase exponentially. Doesn't that mean that content will lose value? Like anything else that becomes readily available in abundance? And if so, what will likely be the new measurement of SEO-focused expertise or authority? What would be SEO-focused expertise or authority?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this recently. I listened to, I don't know if anybody listens to Hard Fork. It's one of my favorite podcasts. And last week they were talking about how as like search generative, what is it? SGE, search generative engine, whatever. Google search engine has the generative response. Search results don't apply anymore. Like the models change. Yeah. And so I've been thinking a lot about this. I would say this. I still believe, I know we always say content is king, content quality. Put the time in to create quality content. Yeah. If it is valuable to people, it will be shared. And so I think quality still reigns the highest thing. Yeah. But I think how we do SEO is going to change. One of the things that I've been playing a lot with is actually creating a GPT that enables you to trick, you say, don't put personal information because it will take it and repeat it back to somebody. Let's use it against it. Let's feed it our next product release update. Let's feed it our press release and tell it to summarize it, but to trick it into getting into the system so that it starts to bubble your content up to the top of the SGE searches. And so I think it's going to change how we do things, but it's not going to change the idea of quality content being the most important thing.
Yeah, it's like in the sea of abundance, like what's going to be valuable is going to like shine up a little bit or like come up.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that question. I love that answer as well. There's another interesting question, which is how do you address IP and copyright concerns with AI? I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
I am not a lawyer, so I almost don't even want to answer this question. What I will say is this. I know both Microsoft and Google have, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to even pretend to throw legal words, but they've done that indemnification for things that they create. And they're saying that we'll take on any lawsuits that you get. Personally, what I have found is two things. One, if you have a proper prompt with so many different unique things that you're asking for, it's just not going to be creating the same thing as it creates for somebody else. Number two is this is where your human magic comes in. Your human magic comes in or making it on brand, making it special. I work with AI copy all the time. And while it gets me to great fast, I probably changed a large number of the words by the time I actually publish it. And so I don't think this is as big of a deal personally right now as I think people are making it out to be.
Yeah. Perfect. We have 1 minute left. I would just say that I was a lawyer and my thesis was exactly about that 10 years ago. And so we're kind of like, I feel like I'm living in the past, but in the future. I think this world is going to be super changing, ever changing. And it's an interesting one to come through. But we have 1 minute left. I don't know if we have one last question maybe from Aline. Do you feel that AI created content all reads the same?
I don't, but I think that there is patterns that AI will deliver.
Will follow.
And so they're all, it's going to repeat the same word. There's going to be aspects that repeat. I have gotten very long in my prompting to try to change that behavior. So my recommendation is, bring out what you want it to do. Use the customization in ChatGPT to say who you want it to write to. Tell it to be whimsical or this and create things in a different way, and you will get those differing results. But a standard answer, yes, is very blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I think that's with that, we have to wrap up because we have 26 seconds left. Natalie, you were amazing and fantastic as always. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you.
It was such a pleasure to be here.
I will hand it off to Kinga for the next session. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And then we will try any question that we didn't answer. We will try to make sure that we have Natalie reply and send it back with the remaining of the resources that we promised. So don't worry if we missed it. We will get it back. See you in the next session.